Hello out there, we're on the air, it's hockey night tonight.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Light and Lamp podcast. I am here with Tim.
Yo.
And today we decided to do our current top 10s at each position. And the idea is that we're going to then do the next podcast is going to be our top 10s of all time at each position, and that's going to be a lot of fun. But we decided to start with current top 10s. So we split it up, obviously, goalies, defensemen, and forwards. And then we threw on some honorable mentions and some future top 10s, some projected, younger guys that in the future could be top 10 at each of their respective positions. And before we get into it, I know our lists differ quite a bit, but I just want to get what was your process of at each position? How are you evaluating? Are you valuing certain things more?
As you just spoke, I was thinking about this, and I thought to myself, we really should have broken centers out of the forward position on this and separated wings and centers, but it's okay. We'll different side thought. So I tried to consider centers just like regular forwards, but it's very difficult because of the importance of that position. So a lot of centers wind up on my forwards list, but it just happened. Defensemen were really tough. I tried to focus on, honestly, ice time and plus minus, because I value those two things a lot. Guy who goes out, plays a lot of time, has a very high plus minus. Really what I'm looking for. And in net, I was looking for save percentages along with wins and what I've noticed skill-wise. Because, I fucking hate Marc-Andre Fleury more than life itself. And that's what I'd say about that.
Yeah, I was kind of the same way. One of the things I tried to consider is consistency. So, one of the reasons that I kind of tended to not put a lot of younger players on my list is because, especially guys that are maybe only in their second year, I think it's really difficult, to kind of say early on in somebody's career, oh, they're a top 10. Obviously, Cale Makar or Quinn Hughes are fantastic defensemen in the league at the moment. But is it really fair to say that they're better than somebody like Victor Hedman or John Carlson, who's been in the league by 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years? It's kind of hard. If I was doing top 10 defensemen of the season, for sure you'd probably put them in there. But in terms of overall consistency in their play, it's harder to rate younger guys. And so I tried to take career stats, career play, consistency into mind. Especially in net, which is why you'll see I have a couple of guys that maybe didn't have the greatest years this year. And then the forwards, like you said, it's extremely difficult really in this league to pick out 10 forwards. There's just so many good elite level forwards. And then obviously centers and wings do very different things. But, I just tried to pick the guys that I think overall have the biggest impact on the ice, whether it be offensively, defensively, or both. Guys that you'll always notice and guys that, have been consistently good as opposed to somebody like, I might say, Dominic Kubalik scored 30 goals in 60 games this year, but it's also his rookie season. So is it really fair to say he's as good as a guy like Leon Draisaitl or Austin Matthews? Probably not. So that was kind of my mindset going into it. So I guess we'll just jump right into it. We'll start with the goaltenders, which obviously I had a lot of fun doing this list. Because I'm very fond of that position.
You want to get right into it, I guess.
Yeah.
So Rob's wrong. Let's start right off the bat here. Rob has no idea what he's talking about.
Well, okay.
With any of these lists.
So
the man left off Sidney Crosby off his list randomly.
That was initially. The story behind that is that I put him on the list, and then when I went to write it down on the computer, for some reason I just didn't put him on, and then Tim pointed it out and called me an idiot, and I was like, yeah, you're right.
Likely story, buddy. I'm sipping my tea right now in disgust.
So I guess I'll read my list, you'll read your list, and then we'll go back and forth and we'll debate. So my list of top 10 goalies, number 1 I have Andrei Vasilevsky from the Tampa Bay Lightning. Number 2, Tuukka Rask. I think those two are kind of self-explanatory. They've been consistently good their whole career. Vasilevsky's probably going to win another Vezina this year, or is at least going to be nominated. Bobrovsky, I was back and forth on putting him on or not. He's had a really atrocious year in Florida, but being a 2-time Vezina winner with several positive seasons, I feel like maybe it's more of an adjustment period for him. So that's why I put him so high, because, I mean, he's a 2-time Vezina winner, the only active 2-time Vezina winner in the league. Connor Hellebuyck from Winnipeg, obviously his goals against is a little high this year, but I mean, the things he's done behind that Winnipeg defense have been nothing short of fantastic. He's been lights out, and one of the big reasons why they're even still in the playoff race. Freddie Anderson, I mean, what more can you say about the guy that doesn't have a backup and never has? He's a workhorse. He's a great goaltender. Carey Price, obviously not really having a good year, but when you look at the team around him, you can't really blame him. And I just mean in terms of raw talent, like pure raw talent on the ice, he's probably a top 3 goaltender in the league in terms of his ability. He just doesn't have the numbers to back that up. But again, the Montreal Canadiens aren't great. Ben Bishop, the reason that he's not higher on the list, despite his stats being, top 5 in the league, he tends to let in a lot of like leaky goals, a lot of questionable goals, a lot of squeakers. Braden Holtby, again, not having a great year, but Stanley Cup champion, and I think I put him on here because he's a money goaltender in my opinion. During the regular season, he kind of just floats and coasts, but he's a whole different beast when it comes to playoff time. John Gibson, I think if he could stay healthy and he had a team around him, would be a Vezina candidate almost every year. He's just that kind of goaltender to me. Pure talent, pure reflexes, flexibility, things along that line as well. If he could stay healthy, like I said, he'd probably be top 5 at least in most stats. And then Jordan Binnington, like I said, I didn't really want to put a lot of young goaltenders on the list, but I had to give Binner a nod, coming in the way he did last year, that playoff run, and continuing it this year and having an excellent season for the St. Louis Blues. Probably has ice running through his veins, probably mentally one of the toughest guys in the National Hockey League. I mean, you can pump him for 6 goals one night, and then the next night he'll put up a shutout. So that X factor, that mental toughness, I think puts him over the edge for me. So yeah, that's kind of like just a brief, quick rundown of my top 10 in net. So Tim, why don't you run us through yours and kind of give us a little blurb about some guys you feel like might need more explanation, and we'll kind of get into it and debate here.
You know what? I'm gonna go through my whole list. I'm gonna let you, and then we're gonna get right into it, because I know everything that you're gonna question, I'm gonna have to explain anyway. So we'll get right into it. So at number 1, I got Connor Hellebuyck. How the hell you pronounce that last name?
Hellebuyck.
Yeah, whatever that last name is. At 2, I've got the Rask. At 3, I've got Andrei Vasilevsky. 4, we got Freddie. 5, we got Carey Price. GOAT. Not really the GOAT, but he's the old man on this list. 6, we got Bobrovsky. At 7, we got Anton Khudobin. Fight me on it. At 8, we got Carter Hart. At 9, we got Jaroslav Halak. And at 10, I have Jake Allen. Get right into it, bud.
Well, okay, so the thing is, I thought about Carter Hart as well. I put him in the future top 10 list because, again, it's like his rookie season. It's kind of hard for me to say, he's as good as, Yaroslav Halak, for example, on your list, who's been in the league for multiple years. But I don't really have an issue with either Khudobin, Halak, or Allen. But I mean, all right, Halak can definitely start. I think for any other team besides the Boston Bruins, he'd probably be a starting goaltender at this point. He's proven that he has that ability. And right now he's probably the best backup in the National Hockey League. Jake Allen's had a bounce back season, and Khudobin is arguably top 3 backup in the National Hockey League. But I don't know. I just feel like you're not wrong in saying that each of those guys are great goaltenders, but I don't
I was
know.
also, I guess, a little confused on the qualification players. I thought that we were going with who was the best in the league right now, not the best in the past, like, not who's the over, like, outside of this season, larger scope best. So I might not have included some of those guys, those last four on there. If we're gonna be honest,
Well, I mean, again,
I
Halak,
don't
I
think that
think.
those guys are the best. With like with qualifications, I think that they're just the best right now.
Yeah, I mean, Halak, for, like I said, for almost any other team besides the Bruins or besides another team that has a firm number one, for many teams in the NHL, he'd probably be starting, and he's been the best backup for the last two or three seasons. Carter Hart, again, like, I'm not saying he's bad. In fact, I love Carter Hart. He's one of my favorite goalies in the league right now. It's just, it's kind of difficult to say, will he continue it? I don't think there's an issue with that. I'm just interested, is Bobrovsky so low because of the kind of season he's been having in Florida? And maybe there's some questions about whether or not he can really repeat what he did in Columbus on a different team. Is that part of why you would put him under somebody like Carey Price, who's having maybe not the greatest season?
I put him down there because his save percentage is not dog shit, but like for an elite goalie, it's dog shit.
Are you talking about career-wise or this season?
This season. Done.
Yeah, I mean, he's having a really awful season in Florida. I don't think there's anybody who would really argue that point. And I think that's probably also why I put him at 3 instead of probably either 1 or 2. I think if you would have asked me the season, so last year before he left Columbus, who's the best in the league, he might be number 1 for me. Like I said,
Yeah,
being a 2-time Vezina Trophy winner.
But this is also, reasons like this are also why PK Subban didn't make my list. For defense, spoiler alert.
Well, yeah, and it's tough because certain goalies on this list have proven that they can do it in multiple places, right? So, for example, Freddie Anderson was great in Anaheim. He's great in Toronto. Who else do I have? Ben Bishop was kind of terrible in Ottawa, pretty good in Tampa Bay, solid in Dallas. But whereas Bobrovsky, we saw him in Philadelphia, really as a backup all of his career there, and he was pretty good. He was good enough to start, which is why he got shipped to Columbus, and then he was elite in Columbus, and then he goes to Florida, and he's like one of the worst goalies, one of the worst starters in the league, just inexplicably. He started to turn it around towards the end of the season, but it's still not the kind of season that you're paying $10 million a season for. So I think there are some questions of whether or not he's legit and whether he can replicate his success in multiple places. So I know why I put Carey Price on the list despite his current season. What made you put Price in the top 5, even though this season he's having is really not the best?
I don't know what you mean. Like he's still having a decent season for like what he's been, what he's got going for him.
Well, in terms of the team he has around him, yeah. I mean,
that's what I'm like. The guy's still putting up like not great stats, but like he's keeping his team in the season. Beyond all things, he's playing a stupid number of games and winning. Winning half of them. If not, I think he's a little over half.
Do you agree with what I said that, like, just pure raw talent wise, he might be the best goaltender in the league?
Yeah. That's why he's on there. It's the same. He's an honorary member of that list.
Yeah, I feel like this is kind of the discussion we've had with Carey Price is like his entire career, right? It's just like, how is a guy that's as good as he is never even played for the Stanley Cup, at least even once? And I think he's only been past the second round once, and he got hurt that season, or that series.
He got schmuck.
It kind of boggles your mind how Montreal botched up 10 plus years of, the best talent-wise goaltender in the National Hockey League. It really kind of blows your mind.
That's what happens when you fucking run on the coattails of your old dynasties.
Yeah, well, their
Who
reluctance...
cares if you won the most? They were before any one of you were born.
Yeah, well, they haven't won a single cup since the league's had more than 26 teams, so...
That's what I'm saying. Most people weren't even born yet.
It's a big feels bad. So let's talk about some of the players that you didn't put on the list, because my just missed list includes Jacob Markstrom from Vancouver, Marc-Andre Fleury of Vegas, and Matt Murray of Pittsburgh. You wrote Fleury, Ben Bishop, and Binnington. So why not Ben Bishop?
Why not Ben Bishop?
Yeah, because he's considered by most...
Khudobin is just better at his job.
Even though Ben Bishop's probably going to get nominated for the Vezina this year?
I mean, Khudobin's numbers are just better. Like, I don't really know what to say. Like, Khudobin's playing retarded. He's just... excuse me. Playing phenomenal. He's just not playing enough.
Yeah, I can understand that. Like I said, I think in terms of when we start to look back on some of the journeymen, which is the coin term for a goalie like Anton Khudobin, who has played on so many different teams. In terms of journeyman backup goaltenders, I mean, he's probably one of the best we've ever seen in the NHL, between his days in Boston, his days in Carolina, and his days now in Dallas. I mean, he's always been solid, reliable. He reminds me a lot of what Biron was towards the end of his career with the Rangers, which is just solid, reliable. He's never going to blow you away, but you know what you're getting out of him, and you can always count on him for a good game. It's just weird that a guy like him has never really been considered a starter, but maybe, being a backup is just somebody their lot in life, and that's what he's good at. I mean, he's made a whole career out of it. So how do we feel about Fleury? Because I know a lot of people are saying, like, oh, Fleury's top 10, he's done all this great stuff in Vegas.
I think
besides your
if
personal
you want to
hatred,
accumulate the luckiest goalie in history, it's him. Like, every great save that man has ever had was him, like, just flying across the crease and, like, it catching his shoulder.
Yeah, I don't really disagree.
When did he ever... Nah, it's hard to say when did he ever not go clutch, because, like, he's done it before. But, like, for real, come on. I could play for the Pittsburgh Penguins in those years and make the cup.
Well, actually, it's funny that you say that, because that's why I left Matt Murray off the list, even though, obviously, two-time Stanley Cup champion Matt Murray. I feel like...
Murray's a bum.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the success that came... And I'm not going to take anything away from Matt Murray, but I feel like a lot of the success of those teams wasn't necessarily riding on Matt Murray. And the fact that he's so young in his career and he's already getting pushed out of the crease by Tristan Jarry really kind of makes you wonder, what his staying power is. I don't really personally think he's going to be in Pittsburgh for his whole career, especially not if he's already being threatened. And that's why I left him off the list. Was those teams, I think, were two of the best teams. Obviously, dumb statement.
Matt
two of the
Murray's
best teams.
like Eli Manning, all right? The guy rode the coattails of his defense and his offense outside of him.
Yeah, it's fair. I feel like if he had better regular season stats, I would be more inclined to put him on the list. And that was kind of my thing with Braden Holtby, too. Is like, his regular season stats have never really been great, but, his clutch play in the playoffs behind what, let's be honest here, really for the longest time was not a great Washington Capitals defense.
Can we never forget that Fleury got sat in the playoffs?
He got sat in the playoffs multiple times. I remember in the...
Can we not... And then he got sat against Philly in a game that they were winning?
He got sat against the Islanders in 2013 for Tomas Vokoun in Game 5, and then Vokoun started Game 6. I remember that series. That was something else. Yeah, I mean, Fleury's had his share of, like, obviously issues, consistency issues in net. And even now, I feel like he's not really top 10 material. He's kind of just good enough to get Vegas to where they need to be. Um, that being said, if this was top 15, I think he would probably be considered like 12 to 13. I really badly wanted to put Jacob Markstrom on this list because I love Jacob Markstrom, what he's doing in Vancouver, but again, it's just this is his breakout year really, and he hasn't put up enough career numbers to justify putting him over somebody. And Jordan Binnington being at number 10, I think Markstrom would be at number 11 just because Binnington's been through the playoffs, he got that Stanley Cup win, and he's replicating his success in the regular season, whereas Markstrom, this is really his coming out party. Although I think if give him 2 or 3 years, we will consider Jacob Markstrom top 10 in the NHL. And then for the future top 10, we have some names here. I put Thatcher Demko down from the Vancouver Canucks, Igor Shesterkin from the New York Rangers, Eunice Korpisalo from the Columbus Blue Jackets, and Carter Hart from the Philadelphia Flyers. I think the guy that I feel most strongly about on this list is either Demko or Shesterkin. Obviously, it's easy to kind of get swept up in the hype around Shesterkin, and he's earned it in the KHL for sure. I mean, he's one of the best, if not the best. He was number 1 or 2 for 4 or 5 years. I don't have any question in my mind about will he be able to translate his skills to the NHL.
It's just like a question of for that future top 10.
So here's the thing, right? So it was interesting when I was thinking about Igor and Georgiev. Having gotten to see Georgiev and Shesterkin play, Georgiev, to me, I think he's going to end up turning out to be a high-end goaltender, for sure. I think he'll be an above-average number 1. I think he'll be somewhere in the likes of, if you want to point out to somebody, a guy like I think Yaroslav Halak was for most of his career, or a guy like Jimmy Howard was in his prime. You know, a great goaltender for sure, a high-end number 1. To me, the thing that he's missing really is kind of that X factor. A lot of goalies, I think, have something that makes them, you know, elite, right? The top 10. And to me, he plays sound positionally, and that's his biggest strength, and I think that's really important. He's a sound positional goaltender. But there's nothing about his game that really excites me, I think. In a way that's Shesterkin, where, you know, he's fast, he's agile, you can see his reflexes and the way he tracks the puck. I think that's the biggest strength of Igor Shesterkin, is his puck tracking ability through tips and screens is next level, and that's why I think he'll end up peaking out of the top 10, whereas Georgiev, a quieter, more positional goaltender, will end up being definitely good enough to bring a team to a Stanley Cup and win a cup or two, for sure. But I don't know that he'll peak out at a top 10. And that's just kind of my thought on that. I'm not sure if you feel differently because you get to watch him more often than I do.
No, I don't really disagree with that. I mean, I wasn't really trying to compare the two. I was just curious what you thought of Georgiev also.
Yeah, I mean, Georgiev obviously is going to be a hot commodity because I don't think him and Shesterkin can last together for too long because they're both going to be, without a doubt, starter caliber. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens because I think Shesterkin's kind of the heir apparent here. But, you know, I think Georgiev right now is kind of like a Philip Grubauer type guy where he's good enough to bring the team that he's on, or you know, if Grubauer was on a competitive team, if Georgiev was on a competitive team, he'd be good enough to bring them to the Stanley Cup and probably win. But is anybody going to say that Philip Grubauer is a top 10 goalie? Probably not. You know, I don't even know if he's considered good enough to win a Stanley Cup. That's a whole other argument that I've had before. Do you have any last minute thoughts on the goaltenders, or are you ready to switch over?
I'm better than you in that. We can move on.
Okay. Why don't we switch it up? So why don't you read your top 10 defenseman list first? And if, like I said, if there's any guys you feel you need to explain a little bit extra, you can give a little short blurb before we get into the deep discussion.
I'm too lazy to do that first part, so we're just gonna get right into it. All right. So if one, I have Roman Yossi. Yeah, you're wrong, buddy. It's not Victor Hedman. Victor Hedman's 2. At 3, I've got Jacob Slavin. 4 is Morgan Riley. 5 is Chris Letang. 6 is Johnny Carlson. Plug. 7 is Shabbat. 8 is Werenski. 9 is Aaron Ekblad. And then 10, I got Dougie Hamilton.
Okay, all right. So at number 1, I have, obviously, as you mentioned, I have Victor Hedman from the Tampa Bay Lightning. Number 2, I have John Carlson. Then I have, at number 3, Alex Pietrangelo. 4 is Morgan Riley. 5, Jacob Slavin. 6, Brent Burns. 7, Chris Letang. 8, Thomas Shabbat. 9, Aaron Ekblad. And 10, Zach Werenski. So I'm actually curious because we were kind of having a conversation the other day about Nashville and their defense, and Roman Yossi's name obviously came up. What makes Roman Yossi number 1 to you?
As I said earlier, it kind of a very big portion is his time on ice. He's out there for, what is it? He's out there for the 3rd most time out of any defenseman in the league at 25 minutes and 46 seconds. And number 1's Shabbat at 26. But the difference between the two is that Roman Yossi has a plus 22 and Shabbat's negative 18.
That's true. I mean, Shabbat also plays for the Senators, so...
Roman Yossi's out there for literally almost half the game. That's dumb impressive. And to do it and still end up positive is insane.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you consider that he's on the Nashville Predators, who are kind of a bubble playoff team.
I was going to say, he's not
this
even
year.
on a winning team. They're a team that struggles to score goals. So to be plus 22 is ridiculous.
Yeah, and they're a bubble team. They're a bubble playoff team. They were streaking before the pause. Yeah, I think the biggest reason I left Roman Yossi out of my list, I put him on my just missed list, is I really wanted to put him in the list. But I wanted to see more seasons of him kind of being the guy. Because with Weber on the team, obviously Weber was the focal point of that defense. When Subban was there, Subban ran the power play. He quarterbacked everything. And this is really Roman Yossi's first season where he's really the leader, right? Like, he's the guy, he's the quarterback, he's the top penalty-killing guy. Not to say that he didn't play important minutes before this season.
I was going to say, the issue is, like, his stats are similar through it, like, the past 5-6 years. It's just he was on the Nashville Predators and no one cares about him because he's on the Nashville Predators. It's kind of like players who go and play for Florida. Who? Cuba who? Cubador? Is that his name? Cuba who?
Yeah, I mean, that's true. Obviously, there's a little bit of... I mean, obviously, with any top 10 list, it's going to be... You're going to kind of gravitate towards the guys that you know better. And we don't get to see Roman Yossi as much here on the East Coast. I think Tim is choking. Are you okay,
That wasn't
buddy?
me. That wasn't me. You're good.
So, yeah, with Roman Yossi, I can totally understand why he'd be your number 1. I don't really have a very strong argument against that. I was just more curious than anything else.
I think it's easy for Victor Hedman to play defense when he plays for the best team in the league.
Well, actually, I was going to say that's one of the things that makes Victor Hedman so impressive to me is just how good at defense he is on a team that traditionally doesn't really value that.
Well, that's what makes him so good.
Like, even in when they revamped their defense, right? They bought in Ryan McDonough and Dan Girardi, two obviously more defensive players. that helped balance out the lineup a little bit. And Victor Hedman wasn't the only guy playing defense back there for the longest time. But I think that the reason that I value Victor Hedman so highly is that he can play pretty much anything you need him to do. I mean, even in terms of points, he's putting up like 40 to 50 points a year. And for a guy who's traditionally billed as the defensive defenseman, he's clearly got that offensive sense. And I think he plays in all three positions. I think his breakout pass is probably the best in the National Hockey League. I mean, the guy makes the crispest breakout passes you could ever ask for. And I overall think Victor Hedman has a super well-rounded game, and I don't think there's any one weakness. I mean, he's big, he's fast, he's strong, he's tough to play against. He can play the power play, he can play the penalty kill, he can block shots and throw hits. I don't really see a weakness in Victor Hedman's game, and that's why I think I value him so highly.
I don't think there's really a weakness either. And I think, honestly, but the reason I just put Yossi above him is because of the differences in the teams that they play on. I think what Yossi does is more impressive.
So there are two guys that I want to ask you about that you left off the list. I think I know the reason for one of them, so we'll start with the
Let me
easy
hear
one. Brent Burns was not on your list. You put him on the just miss list. Why did Brent
he
Burns
doesn't
not
play
make the top?
defense.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say. I think I know
Don't
the
keep his
answer.
big bushy beard in the fucking past his blue line, and we can talk. That
Yeah.
floats in the neutral zone like a bum.
Yeah, he's very high risk, high reward, and I mean some of the passes he makes, especially in the offensive zone, that lead to a lot of breakaways, are just extremely questionable, for sure. That's kind of one of the reasons why I didn't want to put him on, but the reason I end up putting him in is just because, in terms of pure offensive defenseman, he's probably the best pure offensive defenseman in the game. Obviously, that means he doesn't really play a lot of defense. I don't think anybody's going to ever mistake Brent Burns for a defensive defenseman or a defensive Norris candidate. He'll probably, the Norris nominations that he's gotten have been almost entirely because of his offensive numbers, not really so much his defense. But why no Alex Pietrangelo from the St. Louis Blues? I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that.
So, do you remember how before we started this, I said we should include a list of players that we don't get to see?
Yes.
I honestly don't know anything about his game. I've seen him play so little.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
that's...
I could say he's on my just missed because I know he's good. His numbers say he's great. I just couldn't tell you.
And that's fair. Like I said, there's going to be a certain level of bias whenever you do these lists. Obviously, West Coast viewers would get to see him more often and probably put him a little bit higher. But I think that's fair. It's kind of hard for you to judge somebody you don't really see all that often. I put him up there because I think he's just, again, he's a very well-rounded defenseman. He can play almost anything you really need him to. Offense, defense, power play, penalty kill. Not really very many weaknesses in his game, if any. And then there's one other person. So I like the fact that we both have Thomas Chabot on our list. I think he's probably one of the best young defensemen in the league. Dougie Hamilton, that makes sense. I'm curious to get your thoughts on Jacob Slavin, because I didn't really know much about Jacob Slavin prior to last season, but from what I understand and having read up on him, he's been this good pretty much since he got to Carolina. What are your thoughts on Jacob Slavin?
Well, that's kind of the thing. He plays in Carolina, so he's been slowly inching his way into popularity, and that's why you probably found out about him now, because his name's kind of in the headlines a little bit more.
What do you think about his game, his overall game?
I just think he's excellent. Everything that I've been speaking about, plus minus and ice time, his plus minus is ridiculous. 30, 30, plus 30 on the Carolina Hurricane. Come on.
Yeah, I think it's interesting when you watch him because,
Carolina is so bad at scoring goals. They literally need to have a lacrosse player do it.
Yeah, Andrei
And he's
Svechnikov.
plus 30, the guy. Come on.
Yeah, it's really interesting when you watch him because, I got the pleasure of getting to go watch him live this year, and he's really not the fastest guy. That's one thing you'll notice about him right away is he's really not fleet of foot. He's not very fast north-south. He's not very fast east-west.
But he's just positioned.
That's what I was going to say, yeah.
The guy's just in the right spot always.
I think he reads a play better than anyone else in the NHL in the defensive zone. I think in terms of his vision, especially on the rush, I think he reads the play in the defensive zone the best out of anybody in the NHL. He has the best vision in the defensive zone. And just his stick positioning and, like you pointed out, his body positioning is just next level. There's just something about him where he's always in the right spot. It's kind of like how I feel about Morgan Rielly, but in the offensive zone. I think Morgan Rielly has the best vision in the offensive zone in the NHL of the defensemen. He just sees things that other people don't see. Obviously, Morgan Rielly's not as good in the defensive zone, but yeah, Jacob Slavin really is. If we're talking like defensive defenseman, he's probably, I would say, second only to Victor Hedman. But in terms of his vision, I think he reads the play better than anyone else in the NHL, and it really is something to watch when you notice these fine details like his stick positioning on the rush and his body positioning in the defensive zone. It's something else. So Erik Karlsson, obviously,
he's a bum.
So where has Erik Karlsson faltered or gone wrong that he's fallen out of the top 10 when in the previous years he'd been considered the best player in the National Hockey League, or the defenseman at least?
Yeah, busted his hip and now he can't skate. About it.
Yeah.
That's not where we're at.
Yeah.
Guys, move.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. It's funny because we were talking to Steve about it a while ago, and he
We
was
talking
saying,
to who?
yeah, good question. We were saying that, skating was such a big part of Erik Karlsson's game that when he stopped being able to skate because he had to get the pins in his leg and the hip surgery, he really did seem to have to adjust his game. And I think he's better defensively now than he's ever been, but it's definitely not, he's not a fleet of foot. He can't make those plays that he wants to. And he still tries those high-risk passes in the offensive zone that he can't recover from now because he can't skate as well.
Yeah.
So he was on both of our just missed list. I also put on my just missed list Ryan Suter of Minnesota, Seth Jones of Columbus, Esa Lindell of Dallas, John Klingberg of Dallas, and then in the future category we have Quinn Hughes of Vancouver, Cale Makar of Colorado, Adam Fox of the New York Rangers, Miro Heiskanen of the Dallas Stars, Ivan Provorov of the Flyers, and Ryan Pulock of the New York Islanders. I think any of those guys, especially Hughes and Makar, I think are pretty much going to be locks for being top 10 defensemen in the NHL at some point. Adam Fox, I would like to see him round out his defensive game a little bit, similar to Cale Makar. Lightning in the offensive zone, maybe needs a little bit of help in the defensive zone. But I could easily see him being a top 10 defenseman as long as he can stop picking fights with people on Twitter. He should be okay there. And I think Ivan Provorov and Heiskanen are just the real deal, like the full package. They've got everything about them. Do you have any thoughts on any of those guys? I mean, I know that obviously Cale Makar being very exciting and Lightning. Obviously, you've seen a lot of Adam Fox in New York. Do you have any other thoughts on any of those players?
Not really. You kind of said it. Like, those guys who we said just missed it, pretty much just missed it. The defensemen are such a hard group of people to rate because of, do you like offense? Do you like defense? Which one do you prefer more in your defense? It's a tough game to play.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think that's more or less it. I will say about Ryan Pulock, I know a lot of people are going to be questioning, will he ever really be a top 10 defenseman? I think if he could ever learn to hit the net more than 1 out of every 10 shots, he'd probably score 20 goals a year easily. And I think defensively he's just a solid player. But if he ever reins in that 106-mile-an-hour slap shot he's got and can hit the net consistently, he'll probably score 20 goals. But until then, I'll just keep slamming my head against my keyboard when he's on the power play and misses by 10 feet. So now we'll go on to what I think was the hardest category personally to rate. We'll do the top 10 forwards. So I'll go first. Connor McDavid I have as my number one. I think obviously, there's a lot of things that he does well. I don't think we need to explain, the speed, the hands, the vision, the passing. He doesn't bring the defense to the table, but that's okay. I mean, I think just overall in terms of dynamic players, he makes a difference every time he's on the ice. You notice him almost every game. And if you don't notice him during that game, the Oilers probably lose. So that's why I have him as my number one. Number two, Nathan McKinnon. I mean, just an electrifying player. Number three, Sidney Crosby. As much as I hate the guy, having had to deal with him for so long, I don't think anybody can really question his hockey IQ. And as his legs have started to slow down and his skating has started to slow down, he's made the adjustment to become better in the defensive zone. He's a bulldog in the corners. He wins a lot of one-on-one puck battles. People describe him as a first-line grinder, which I think is a perfect way to describe him. Just a bulldog. He wants the puck. He gets the puck, and he has great vision. Pasternak, I mean, the guy's just a pure goal scorer. Ovechkin, again, pure goal scorer.
You just skipped over McKinnon.
No, I touched on Nathan McKinnon like a little bit. I said that, he's obviously probably one of the fastest guys in the league. Elite level shot, and he's really had a breakout coming out party in these last 2 seasons that has really propelled him to be the pick that Colorado thought he was going to be. And he's just a dynamic player. I mean, it's really hard to contain a guy like him when he's on the ice. Austin Matthews, again, Toronto, he's got a lot of help in Toronto, so it's kind of hard to say. Not hard to say how good he is, but it helps having that much talent around him. But I mean, just an otherworldly snapshot when he curls his wrist back, it's probably going in the net. I mean, just an otherworldly snapshot he's got, and when he sets his mind to it and he's mentally engaged, he really does make a difference every game. Patrick Kane, what more can you say about the number one point getter in the 2010s besides he just does it? Like, when you need a goal, you just call on Patty Kane. He gets it done. Leon Draisaitl, I put him in the top 10. I had some doubts going into the season of how good is he really. But when McDavid went down with the injury and they split up the two on the 2 different lines, he proved to me that he can get it done without Connor McDavid, and he's not just Connor McDavid's shotgun rider. He can drive offense himself from any position, center or wing. Artemi Panarin of the New York Rangers. I think the thing that really sets Panarin apart from a lot of other players is just how much respect he commands on the ice. I mean, you see it game in and game out with the Rangers where he finds these guys that are wide open on the back door, and it's not necessarily like he's making the prettiest pass or the tightest sauce, but just how much respect defensemen and other players have for him that they double team him or even triple team him. I've seen it before. He's a threat from wherever he is in the offensive zone. Obviously, being a winger, defensive zone, not as much responsibility, but whenever he's in the offensive zone, you have to watch him no matter where he is. He could be behind the net, and you still have to pay attention to him because he's going to draw those 2 defensemen over, and he's going to find a wide open guy. And then Jack Eichel. I think Jack Eichel gets overlooked a lot in the NHL, and I think it's really unfortunate because the guy carries this Buffalo Sabres team on his back every single season, and the numbers he puts up, sure, he's not cracking 40 to 50 goals. Sure, he's not cracking 90 to 100 points. But when you watch the game, I mean, just how much this guy puts his team on his back every single night. He's got great hands. He's got an excellent shot. One of the best goal scorers in the National Hockey League. And he plays with literally nobody. I mean, okay, sure, Jeff Skinner scored 40 goals last year. What has he done this year? He's got like 13. Okay, sure, he's got Victor Olofsson this year. Victor Olofsson's a rookie. I mean, this guy plays with literally nobody, and he puts the team on his back and drags them through the mud every single game, kicking and screaming to try to get this team to go anywhere. And I really think Jack Eichel deserves more respect than he gets because he's playing with literally nobody, and he does it. And he just goes out there and he wows every single time. So you and I are gonna fight because of your list and my list, but I want to hear your list and then we'll get into it. So walk us through your list.
All right, so I have Panarin at 1. I have McKinnon at 2. I've got Sid the Kid at 3. I've got Pasta at 4. Got Kaner at 5. Austin's Shave Your Mustache, You Pedophile Matthews at 5. 6. Yeah, 5. I've got Draisaitl at 6. I've got McNasty 7. No, these numbers are off. Doesn't
You're
matter.
off by 1, yeah.
Yeah. I've got Ovechkin at 9. And then I've got the Eichster at 10. So let's get into it, buddy.
So the question on not only my mind but everybody else's mind is, why is Connor McDavid at number 8?
Because his plus minus is dog shit. His ice time is not that high for someone of his caliber. And he's just shit on defense. Really just bad at it.
I mean, is it really fair to judge him on plus minus when he plays for the Oilers, who haven't had a goaltender since Curtis Joseph, probably?
And his face-off percentage is dog shit.
Yeah, that's fair. I think the face-off percentage is something that you have to pay attention to, but you don't think that just what he does on the ice every time he steps on the ice offsets any of that?
I think he's, without a doubt, the most skilled player in the NHL. I don't necessarily think he's the best player in the NHL.
So, now I'm interested, why did you put Draisaitl over him then?
Because Draisaitl is better this season. Draisaitl has he has the most rushes with the puck from his defensive zone, which is an insane stat to have. And then to have that with the most points is ridiculous. It just commands and demands so much.
It's interesting. It's very interesting to me because obviously, again, not really taking into account too much of what people, in NHL.com or, other pundits would say. But obviously when people think about, best players in the league, usually Connor McDavid is up there at number 1.
He's just... It's not that he doesn't impress me every time. He impresses me every time he steps out on the ice, without a doubt. It's just, I don't think he's doing it when it matters.
Are you talking in terms of, playoff games and stuff?
In games that matter. In moments that matter in the game.
It's hard to say. I mean,
I don't think he's very lucky. I think his luck stat is dog shit.
He needs to buff his luck stat.
Yes, honestly.
It's just, man, it's so interesting, right? Because, you look at the names that are above him on your list. I mean, listen, when we do a top 10 forwards list in the NHL, obviously any of these guys are elite level players. There's not a question. So by me saying I don't understand why Connor McDavid is below a guy like Austin Matthews, I'm obviously not saying Austin Matthews is not a bad player. I'm not saying Austin Matthews is a bad player.
Austin Matthews' face-off percentage is insane.
Is it really?
He's at 54%.
Wow, I didn't even realize he was that good. In the dot.
That's what I'm saying. That's an important thing. I value face-offs so much. So much of the game can be lost at that point.
Yeah, I mean, especially obviously as a guy like...
And you command and drive the game so much more because the goalie then he's not going to want to hold the puck. He's going to want to play it every time. Reduce face-offs. Reduce chance him losing.
Okay, so then my another big question, Panarin at number one. Obviously, this season, I think he's probably the Hart Trophy favorite. I mean, just the things that he's done on that New York Ranger team are nothing short of spectacular. Obviously, without him, the New York Rangers would not be anywhere close to where they are at the moment. I think, like I said, if they ended the season today and they gave out the award, the player judged most valuable to his team, I don't really know if there's anybody that's done as much for his team as Artemi Panarin has for the New York Rangers. But I'm just curious, the best forward in the NHL, especially considering, like we've said, it's really hard to judge wingers and centers, and Artemi Panarin plays on the wing. So I just want to pick your brain about why did you put him at number one?
Okay, so his time on, he's 16th in time on ice. He has the highest plus minus. He is obviously what is he? In points? He's fourth. He's fourth in points overall. What about that doesn't say best forward?
His position.
Because he's a wing?
And maybe it's unfair that we did the list as just forwards, but I think that there's something to be said for a center versus a winger.
But he's that time on ice makes that so much. Is this very important part of that? Because he's out there for so much time.
It's just,
and to have such a high plus minus with so much time is a very key portion of that. That's showing you that he's out there longer than he's really commanding so much time on the ice. He's such a value.
I guess it's kind of a difference in mentality, right? Because I don't really think of plus minus as really much of a stat that impacts a certain individual player. I view plus minus as a lot of, kind of the team that you're on, especially when it comes to the less defensively important positions now.
The important part of the plus minus, what I'm saying, is also their time on ice. That's what makes it so important. Because you're 100% right. Like, someone could play like 14 minutes a night and be like plus 36 or something stupid. And you'd be like, okay, and people would think he's good because of it. But that's not the case. When they're playing more time than everyone else, and they have some high plus minus, same.
Yeah, it's weird, right? Because we talked about, with Thomas Chabot and how much time he plays on the ice, and obviously his plus minus is just not going to be as good as other guys because, unfortunately, he's playing on, the Ottawa Senators, whereas it'd almost be weird if Panarin didn't have a crazy plus minus because he's putting up so many points, so a lot of those plus minuses are what he's generating himself, and plus the New York Rangers are one of the better scoring teams in the National Hockey League. It's just, again, like I said, really we're kind of picking apples and apples here. It's like, obviously the guy's a top 10 player. What's really the biggest difference between me putting him at 9, you putting him at 1? Like I said, having gotten to see more of him, I don't necessarily think he does anything better than anyone else in this top 10 list. It's just that he has that, for some reason, that magnetism where everyone's afraid of him. So, is he going to make a pass as nice as Sidney Crosby? Probably not. Does he have better hands than Patrick Kane? I'd say they're probably about equal. Is he faster than Nathan MacKinnon? No. But there's just something about him that commands respect when he's on the ice, where he draws those extra 2, those 3 defenders over to him. And I think it's that he's just unpredictable. I think it's that he can do everything, and you're really worried about it. Some guys tend to be one-trick ponies, like Connor McDavid. You have to shut down the speed on the drive, and you have to worry about the hands, obviously. But if you can contain him and keep him to the outside, he's not a threat anymore. Guy like Alex Ovechkin, best pure goal scorer of our generation, maybe even of all time. Although I would debate that, but maybe even of all time. Watch the one-timer. You got to shut down the one-timer option, and then a lot of that offense goes away. But Panarin can really do it all, and even if you contain him and keep him to the outside, he's still a threat because he's going to find that open player. So again, do I feel like he's the best player in the league? No, I'm going to have to disagree with you on that. But can I understand the argument as to why he would be it? Yeah, I mean, the things he's done on that New York Ranger team are nothing short of spectacular. I mean, he's turned Ryan Strome into basically a point-per-game player, which is something he's never been his entire life. And that kind of saying something. He's turned a lot of these players on the Rangers from kind of just okay to just other next-level players. And that's important, being able to make the people around you better. I think that's part of why I value Connor McDavid so high, is because he makes plugs like Zach Cassian look good.
That's fair. I understand that point. I don't think he's very clutch, Dave. Kind of why I don't respect him is kind of why I don't respect Pasta as much. Pasta has a lot of goals. He does a really nice job scoring goals, but he's scoring 6 goals in a game where they won 6-0. Like, cool, you scored 6 goals, but you beat them 6-0. Is it even a competition? You could have scored 1 goal and then, maybe tried to have worked on things in the game and done something productive. Instead, you just decided to go shit on a team that was having a bad night. Not that you shouldn't, but it's not impressive.
I do want to get your thoughts on Jack Eichel, because obviously, I kind of went on that little tangent there about how he's not getting enough respect. I'm very interested to hear as to why you put him at number 10, because generally in these lists, guys like maybe Kucherov or Bergeron would be put above him. So what made you put Jack Eichel at number 10?
The Ike Daddy? He's disgusting. Literally filthy. I don't think anyone scores goals like him currently in the NHL. No one does it as pretty. He's just disgusting. He just takes it in and he just rips it. Or he makes a little move, little deke, little head fake. And then he just bink, lasers it every time. I have to put the video in slow motion to track it sometimes.
Do you think that there's a certain element to being impressed by what he's done every night, considering that he's playing with basically nobody on that offensive
Yeah, and can we talk about how he also has more assists than goals?
Yeah, well, that's saying something considering who he's playing with, right?
That's what I'm saying. He's making everybody on that team better because no one has more than 10 goals on the team.
Yeah, I mean, this season, obviously, he gets to play with Victor Olofsson, who's having a pretty good rookie season, but Jeff Skinner came nowhere close to the 40 goals that he hit last year, which is, again, something I said was going to happen. So Victor Olofsson is nice, but he's a rookie. Jeff Skinner is going back to his 20-goal scorer ways, and he's sure, they have a nice defensive core. I mean, Rasmus Dahlin, Rasmus Ristolainen.
And Jack Eichel's also second in time on ice.
Yeah. I mean, he is the Buffalo Sabres, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, come on. He's insane. No.
Yeah, I think that's kind of just my soapbox PSA, please everybody respect Jack Eichel more, because he truly is one of the best players in the NHL, and I think if he played with somebody better, he would easily be hitting 30 to 40 goals a year and 90 points. I think that's well within his grasp. So on my just miss list, I have Bergeron, who originally was on my list, mostly for his two-way defensive game. I think he's one of the best defensive forwards in the game. Kucherov, Jonathan Huberdeau, Mitch Marner, Mark Scheifele, Matt Barzal, and Sebastian Aho are all on that list. I think of guys that are kind of scraping the surface there. I think I might add Ryan O'Reilly to that list again for his two-way forward type play. You have also Evgeny Malkin and Brad Marchand with Zibanejad and Pedersen. And I actually have Elias Pettersson on my future top 10s with Nick Suzuki and Jack Hughes. I'm curious to get your thoughts on Evgeny Malkin. Just missed the list. Obviously, he's kind of always played second fiddle to Sidney Crosby, but it's really interesting that whenever Crosby gets hurt, Malkin ends up being a better than point per game player. What do you think is holding Malkin back from being a top 10 or being on your top 10 list?
He doesn't want it. He just doesn't care. I feel like he's very lazy, very chillaxed. I feel like he tries when he wants to. And so when Sid happens to, go out for injury, gets cold or something, when Princess needs to go take a nap, he steps up and wins the game for them. He's a workhorse. He rolls out so clean. He's just a big bull.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, right? Because arguably on pretty much almost any other team, Evgeny Malkin would be playing first line center, but he's always played second line center behind Sidney Crosby. And we've never gotten to see Evgeny Malkin on a team that wasn't the Pittsburgh Penguins. I don't think we ever will. But it's interesting that he always ends up being better than a point per game when Crosby is out. But I can understand what you say. He's not... It's hard to say he's not dynamic because he has a lot of great puck vision and a lot of power moves. But I think that's really it. Is he's more of a power forward. He's bigger body, drive to the net. He's not as exciting as other players are. He certainly was when he was younger, and now kind of over time you start to become more of a power forward. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But I mean, I'm not as excited when Evgeny Malkin touches the puck as I am when like McDavid or McKinnon touches the puck, or even like Austin Matthews or Patrick Kane. I'm like, oh, okay, like Evgeny Malkin's got the puck, like we'll see what happens here. Kind of not a one-trick pony, but not as dynamic or as influential in the game as some other players, I feel. So I do want to get your thoughts on one more forward. Obviously, again, only one season. It's very hard to judge these guys. Do you think Kaapo Kakko could be a future top 10 player in the NHL, or do you think he's going to peak out at good first-line winger, elite first-line winger, but maybe not top 10 material? I might be having some technical difficulties. Are you still there, Tim?
Yeah.
So, I just said I wanted to ask about Kaapo Kakko. Do you think he's ever going to be top 10, or do you think he peaks out at, like, first-line winger?
Kaapo, I don't know. I think he might be a low first-liner, maybe high second-liner, depending on the team. I don't really see him as a superstar, to be honest with you. But he's young. It's his first season. I could just be harsh. But I'm just not sure he'll ever reach that star mark.
Well, is it like, the speed, the hands? Is there a weakness in his game that you see?
I just don't, he just doesn't impress me. Is really what it comes down to. He's not doing anything special.
Yeah, I can understand that. Obviously, I get to watch him a fair bit as well. I still think he's got a lot of growing to do, but I think the thing that's going to hold him back more than anything, I think his decision-making sometimes is questionable. Sometimes he shoots when he should pass, he passes when he should shoot, and some of that comes with, just experience and learning more and playing the game more, but it's just kind of weird that sometimes he'll be wide open and he'll try to make that extra pass and force it, and I'm not sure if that's coming from the coaching staff or from himself, but yeah, I can understand that. So, real quick, we're at about an hour, so real quick, what are, like you said earlier, some players that you wish you got to see more, or players you feel like you might have done a disservice to because you don't get to see them? Just fire off some names and we'll just discuss.
Mark Giordano. I don't really see the Flames play ever. He might be a top 10 defenseman. PK Subban is. I get to see him play. He's just he plays for a team that doesn't matter, so he doesn't matter.
Poor PK.
Oh, what else we got?
You were saying earlier the Dallas Stars defenseman.
Oh yeah, Klingberg. He might be a top 10 defenseman. Easy. Seth Jones might be a top 10 defenseman. Those are questionable ones. What else we got? Tyler Sagan might be a top 10 forward in the league.
Tyler Sagan. Interesting. Can't really just.
Yeah, he might be a top 10. Tough one.
Yeah, I think Mark Giordano, I think, had a late career renaissance, but that's starting to peter out now. Seth Jones, it's hard. It's hard to judge certain players, right? Like any of the Dallas Stars defensemen, Esa Lindell, John Klingberg, or Miro Heiskanen, might be top 10, but it's just so hard to say when there's so many good defensemen on that team. And the same as in Columbus with Seth Jones and Zach Werenski. It's hard, and obviously I put Zach Werenski at number 10, but it wasn't an easy decision. It's hard to say, like, how good are these guys when a lot of the defensive core is that good. You know, it's kind of like the Toronto Maple Leafs. Like, well, how good is John Tavares really when he's playing with Mitch Marner, who might be the best player on that team, or Austin Matthews, or Tyson Barrie, or Morgan Riley? You know, it's hard when it gets so flooded like that to really separate certain guys from the pack. Obviously, you can separate out Austin Matthews from the pack because he's a focal point. He's the guy that most of the offense runs through. But I can understand, you know, the Seth Jones debate. It's hard because him and Zach Werenski are often linked so close together that it's like, oh, well, can you really separate the two? And then how much is one guy doing versus the other guy, and all sorts of other stuff like that. So before we end, real quick, who's your favorite player in the NHL right now? We'll say favorite goalie and then favorite either skater. Oh, we'll do one of each. So who's your favorite goalie, your favorite defenseman, and your favorite forward?
Who's my favorite goalie?
Yeah, just
Hank. I love Hank to death. My favorite defenseman? We'll go back to that one. My favorite forward is Showtime himself.
Patty Kane.
Patty, the Pussy Destroyer Kane.
Showtime. Patrick Kane. The mullet man himself.
My favorite defenseman? I don't really know. Be quite honest. Probably Tony Pepperoni on the Rangers.
Tony DeAngelo.
Yeah.
Let's see. My favorite goalie in the NHL is probably John Gibson. I just love watching him play. He's just electric every time he plays, and I really wish he could stay healthy. And I really wish he was healthy when the Anaheim Ducks were good, but he got hurt every season. But I've been watching him ever since he was in. I mean, even when he was on the World Junior Classic team, the 18 and under on Team USA. I remember watching him back as far as that. Favorite defenseman is honestly probably Morgan Riley. I mean, he's just like, he sees the ice so well. He's really exciting and he's really fun to watch. Yeah, he's just a great player, and the plays he makes are just really exciting. And my favorite forward in the NHL, I mean, obviously I'm going to have a little bit of bias. I probably would say Matt Barzal at the moment. Just like his edge work and his skating is just incredible. I mean, I think he's maybe not the fastest north-south guy, but in terms of his ability to change direction, I mean, his just skating is otherworldly.
Yeah, he's a plug.
And he's just a lot of fun to watch. I wish he had some teammates to play with. That would be nice. So I'd probably say Barzell, although I think Eichel's a close second because I love watching Eichel drag the Buffalo Sabres to relevancy every night. Somebody please get Jack Eichel some help. I need to see Jack Eichel in the playoffs. The NHL needs that, and he can't do it playing with nobody. For the love of God, stop giving him players to play with like Jimmy Vesey. It doesn't work. Do you have any last minute thoughts before we wrap up here?
No, not really.
Well, that's going to do it for us this time. Next time, we're going to be doing the top 10s of all time, which is going to be, I'm sure, a very interesting topic. I'm sure we're going to have a lot of different names on that list, but that's going to be next time. I'm really excited to do that, actually. I can't wait to get that done. And that's about it. Oh, before we wrap up, actually, I did want to say one more thing. Some news came out today from the Philadelphia Flyers organization that Oskar Lindblom is nearing the end of his treatment, and he said he's feeling great. He hopes to get back on the ice soon. So I think, I just want to say, from me personally and then from everyone here at the Light and Lamp podcast, that we're very happy for Oskar Lindblom. That is, his cancer treatment is coming towards an end, and we hope to see him back on the ice soon. And even if he doesn't get back on the ice, we would just want to wish him well and good health and a long cancer-free life. So good news coming out of Philly. We're glad to hear that about Oskar Lindblom, and his treatment is going well and almost coming to an end. So thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you guys again next time.